So in this lesson we are going to look at this mystical plugin that I mentioned that can control wayward reverb tails and delay that can so often cause cluttered or muddy sounding mixes. This plugin is called a gate. It's a very simple plugin, it's so often overlooked, but it can really help when it comes to mixing because it allows us to control the time dimension very well. And basically a gate is like a real gate but for audio. So it lets some audio through and it shuts some audio out. So let's hop into our DAW and I'll show you what I mean. Okay, so here we are in Ableton Live. I have soloed the kick and the snare and I've added a little bit of hi-hats as well. Now let's add some reverb to the snare. I made it quite extreme so I can explain the gate and demonstrate it properly. And on all gate plugins you will have some of the same core controls. The first of which is threshold, and much like a compressor, the threshold determines the level at which the effect comes into play. So if we have the minimum threshold available, it lets all of the audio signal through, and if we have the maximum, which is plus 6 dB on this gate, which is the Ableton Live native plugin, only audio over 6 decibels will be allowed through the gate. So that's none at the moment. You can see here where the snare is hitting. So we'll bring it down. And you can hear the very beginning of the snare, which is the loudest part, is being let through the gate, and everything else is being shut out of the gate really quickly. And the reason why we might want to use a gate is to shorten the reverb if it ends up clashing with other instruments in the same frequency space at the same time. Now, because our reverb tail is clashing slightly with this high percussion, because they're both in the high frequency range, we are in effect going to knock out the reverb signal as the hi-hats sound. So the hi-hats will take the place of the reverb tail and we won't have the clutter of both things happening at the same time. So as I said, we've got threshold. The floor control determines by how much the signal below the threshold is reduced. So at the moment it's being made completely silent. At that point it's being reduced by minus 17.3 dB, and if you bring it up to 0 there's no reduction whatsoever. So let's bring it down to 0 so it makes it completely silent underneath the threshold, and we'll look at these other controls. So hold is like sustain on a soft synth really. It determines how long the gate is held open for. Release determines how slowly the gate closes. So you can hear it's much softer rather than suddenly slamming shut. And attack is how smoothly the gate opens. Now with a fast transient sound like a snare, it's going to spoil the transient as the gate is closed when it hits at its strongest point. And that is it, it's that simple. So let's see how we can use this to our benefit with regards to the 4D mixing space. So as we've said, we do not want the reverb of the clap snare to be clashing with this high percussion. So let's just dial in some settings on the gate and bring it under control. So with the gate off, there's a lot of build up of reverb there. Now it's quite noticeable in this instance to illustrate the point, and you might not want it that noticeable, but even if we turn off the high percussion, we don't necessarily want the reverb to build up over more than one snare. So we want the reverb to cut off as the new snare sounds, so we're not stacking the reverb tail. So let's just do that and it'll be a more subtle effect. So the reverb tail is being shut out of the gate just a split second before the new clap sounds. And that is how you use a gate. You can do it for delay as well. You can also use it on an auxiliary channel, which I said we'll look into a bit more later. So we are almost done with our core plugins. We just have one more, so I will see you in the next lesson when we cover the Stereo Imager.